So I'm looking at chemistry. I just hit record. Here we go. Here's what I got. I was trying to figure out what is going on with these channels. Like, if you watch my previous videos, I came up with what I think hydrogen is explained by currents into a single channel polygon that probably actually I've been thinking about it probably takes more of a spherical shape, like legitimately a spherical shape with a single inlet. But then that inlet also is the outlet, and then within that single spherical shape it can create like a mass maybe at the bottom. Maybe it'd be better if I drew this spherically. First of all, that would probably help to have 3 dimensions, not 2 dimensions. I'm just trying to simplify it. Maybe a sphere is actually well represented, like in a Riemann plane, as just a square. So maybe it actually is like if we. I was thinking also about this, like squares. Maybe are pixels, which are representative of like Riemann spheres in some way. So basically, it's maybe appropriate to think in squares as spheres, and just like across dimensionally. So maybe it's appropriate to say this is a square shape with more of a opening at the center that allows for just a current to flow around it and many like channels, many flows versus a mass where there's like a mass. So like from what is it, hiking with Sean, these things, masses within a polygon. All these in Illinois. Here's another one. A mass within a matrix. So I'm not sure about that last one in terms of representing the polygon. The polygon may be broken in the last one in a way, or it may be like partially broken. But so when the channel flows in though, it's not just like, it's a flow of material just like Earth. Like there's water if water's flowing here, it's gonna build up a mound, and the water is gonna flow around the mound at times, creating a current around it. That's part of why it's probably spherical in truth is like the best way to actually picture how these currents are flowing. Although maybe its outer boundary is more represented in a square. I'm not quite sure with like a shape change from a sphere here to more of a pixelated like cube on a larger scale. And so the energy comes in and just like water brings material, solids that then deposit, that build up in a corner, in some section, some location where it's optimal to form. If it's a sphere at the other end, like filling the top. And maybe that's what's happening when something blows its top. Like a Beetlejuice is said to have blown its top, is maybe it only had a single inlet ultimately in some way, like some fundamental inlet on some dimension that made it where on that same dimension it blew its top because the inlet maybe was just filled with this blockage of this mass that's then. So maybe this isn't quite exactly right, but this general concept is I think this is a huge step forward in our understanding, or back to a previous understanding, really. Back towards a previous understanding that we actually had, and that people like myself who I learn from and can only at times reference, like because of the sheer amount of times I just information comes from places, including my own, like working through it in this way, where I don't know. But yeah, with everyone together, we're coming back to an understanding that we once had, which I came across this again last night. NEXT on YouTube, on Twitter, posted about it, and I was like, I was just making a video where I drew this pretty much. Like if we go to lithium, like I kind of drew it. I mean, to a degree, like I drew the kind of thing going on, and that's not the only thing I drew on this wall. That's why I was like, and then it's just got this row of dots. I'm like, are these like different energy levels? Like we call them like atoms, hydrogen, helium, but they're like, dude, we gotta generalize. This is how they generally function. Here, let us describe them exactly on this wall, and by basically, because right here there's two current channels. There's two channels, maybe kind of thing, that in whatever circumstances there's like that, then it leads to the system having like two bonds. So I was thinking like hydrogen, if this is hydrogen, and really interesting, if this is how a hydrogen functions, where it has a single inlet, and then the current goes through and goes around and comes out the same inlet. So it's basically got an inlet outlet combo in the same location. Whereas like helium, so if this brings a mass in, builds up a mass, however it does it, it builds up two new masses, and it has basically a region every time for some current to flow, because that's what the proton really is an empty space a within a shell that the proton's mass represents, which is like this polygon here, like this polygon. It's above and below layers that keep it like, so that this inlet is a tiny little tube almost, that then has this body like a sphere, that it just has a tiny inlet, and it flows through a current. So there's always a way for the current to flow through, but as it happens, it builds up masses, and it reshapes the polygon by building also its mass. So like, let me pull up this. I was looking at these things. Lysogang ring structure. So this is kind of like that, a channel into like a structure that has like a polygonal shape, and then is adjacent to other systems perhaps. But I noticed iron, though the rings are considered a frequent occurrence in sedimentary rocks, rings composed of iron oxide can also occur in permeable, igneous, and metamorphic rocks that have been chemically weathered. And I'm like, it's almost like it's building a shell. Like as long as it builds a shell that's sturdy enough, like it's easy to build a sturdy shell in like a week matrix of just like this perhaps, but in a more like metamorphic rock matrix, it may require a more substantial components of the polygon to really like contain the shape, to keep the shape, because like this shape could just blow open, and then this current just flows through it, and it's the system that is there doesn't really exist anymore. It's just like a channel. Then the current goes through. It doesn't go out here. It doesn't go out here. It's just a channel. It becomes a channel in essence. Like out of a channel comes hydrogen by ballooning. by a current filling the channel, a single channel. Maybe that's what that represented, because I was kind of looking at that. This Inga stone here, it bends around the end, so it's almost like an inlet and an outlet in a single channel. Not to suggest that that's what it represents, but I wouldn't be surprised if these are current flow paths that have meaning, that are just universal current flow paths that can be deduced by just thinking through what would current do if able to like have a polygon shape that it flowed into, that it then made a mass on one of the sides, or maybe in like a certain location down here, that then caused like a larger let me get my pen pad out. Just kind of like this, I guess. Why did that not work? Oh, it's just, I guess probably with a current path around it, maybe even like this. Something of that nature. Maybe even to the point where it's like an actual core. When it's stable, maybe it's an actual core. It moves from this side out to here because the current goes around it. While it's building it, like building it here, so it's building a mass down here, but it still goes around it, and then it just continues to build this mass, and this current builds space so that it's basically laminar, like the same width throughout. So maybe the most stable hydrogen stabilizes like this with a single, with an inlet and an outlet. Maybe. But if we just keep it more in like a square shape, maybe that's feasible too. I'm not sure. But let's say that this then is deuterium, whereas protium is without the core, it just has a current flowing through. Deuterium, it produces a mass. So then tritium produces a mass, would probably, if following this path, let's just say tritium, there's a single inlet. Okay, this honestly, it probably makes more sense than the way I was drawing these polygons. It's a single inlet, let's draw the core, but it's splitting. So that inlet, even though it's going around here, it would like to just go straight here. So it starts to divide the nucleus with enough energy. With enough energy, it divides this nucleus, which then causes it to be separated until ultimately it's probably, I don't know how it would balance itself, just elongated maybe like this and like this, where the polygon extends outward. It's probably what's happening when systems divide. So let's put a current here. Initially it comes in and goes around this inner circle. Until it's able to go through here. At which point, let's change this maybe a little lighter. I guess it goes like this. Well, it was probably still going this way, so it probably still is going this way. because it would really be unstable. If they were colliding here, it'd be absurdly unstable. Whereas this was still an outlet, so it's probably still going this way. Generally. And maybe this is like the positive charge here. Like this general region. That was way orange. I thought it was red. Like, I guess I look at this color and I don't look at the selected color. It's like a peach. Something like that, to a point where, and then this is a neutron. A neutron. Neutron. Maybe that's how pumpkins form. They just have a bunch of nucleuses that like spiral out the outer edge, creating but then the intersection just forms this like positive, a region for current to flow energetically. Okay, so back to hydrogen though, like this general concept that it has an inlet and an outlet that are the same place. Why would that matter? Because I was looking at valence bonds and I was like, you know, maybe let's look at, and my thought was like, so to just real quick go back here, and maybe this is mistaken, maybe this carves through and creates this channel over here, but this may then allow for like both directions of flow, but I really do believe it makes more sense that it just flows in one direction, that just begins from a single inlet and just continues out that way ad infinitum if we really wanted, and maybe it can explain structures like this somewhere down the line where we start to arrive at, well, we need to create some unit, like maybe we've realized like there's some standard unit that repeats, like the full orbital of S2 orbital, S1, S2, 1s2s, I don't even know. To a point where that represents like one of these structures though, so it doesn't even, it's hard to even tell what's happening without all of the like worked out details, maybe to enough degree where it almost is like two currents with a positive and negative that then like as they get closer can like allow for the channel of flow to pass through again, because clearly it did in the past. Hydrogen bonds. So I was thinking like, depending on the number of valence bonds, like some chemicals, some elements like hydrogen can only have one bond. Others can have several, but then there, even though I just said hydrogen can only have one bond, it can actually have hydrogen bonds, which are pretty unique, a special type of bond. Not a covalent bond. Very electronegative atoms such as nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine. Electronegative. So it's very wanting in current, maybe. Or having in current. Producing current, maybe that would make sense. If like oxygen produced current somehow. Where it was like electronegative, maybe. Okay, so let's just look at some images though. Hydrogen bonds. this kind of thing where there is I'm not yeah. So maybe let's imagine new water. We don't necessarily know oxygen yet, but maybe we can just draw it generally. Oxygen bonds at certain angles. 104. So let's just say 104-degree angles. So maybe here and here are channels in and out of this question mark of oxygen, whatever its like equivalent structure is, like this. Oxygen. Okay. Some reason it causes at that point the channels to be not like directly opposite, so that the flow through goes like here and here maybe. But if there is, let's say, one of those hydrogens here, where its current, let's put another hydrogen. Let's imagine there's a current coming in here that way. Maybe not though. Maybe it's coming in more like this. I believe this makes it a closed system. So maybe these do have both currents flowing both ways. Once they puncture a hole, it probably stabilizes in a way where currents are just flowing both directions. That makes sense, honestly. So let's just say it's flowing in both directions, though. And maybe it's coming in this way. So maybe there's like a leak this way. That's what I'm kind of thinking. It comes in like this. It goes back through. Wraps around somehow to connect across. In both instances, having like, because of this, because of the way this is, the current just prefers to go off also to another side, maybe, and join with another hydrogen. Like it, my point is, maybe I don't understand it exactly, but that it's current flows that are like why hydrogen bonds exist. And we can probably deduce it by like this kind of process. So let's say, I mean, at this point, it's just kind of, that's good enough. I can't really add any more to my little drawing. It's just pretty much like maybe that's what's going on, is a current. These are bonding. Oh, It's possible oxygen has some sort of like subtle openings. Uh, like maybe the later atoms, their polygons are more stable here, so that there are less like subtle channels. Because it's kind of like a picture perfect world to assume this polygon is perfect. Where if we look at like polygons throughout the world itself, even where I can find some that have like single channels, like this one kind of has like an inlet outlet thing going on here. But like it's got subtleties. There's probably some exchanges in other places, like here, where if this was behaving as a hydrogen like seed that got filled with material that caused it to bubble out to a certain shape where it became like a oxygen atom maybe along the way, like without enough material it still just hasn't built up a stable enough like polygonal system. It hasn't produced like full blown new channels occurring, perhaps. Although, then again, maybe that's what's going on with like, because hydrogen to helium is a new channel. Then it's stable again with the new channel. And I don't think it carves a new channel, but maybe it starts carving new channels. Because these are kind of in need of more bonds. It's almost like they need more channels then. And then maybe there's, even though we put them like in sequence of their masses, they really differentiate at that point. Like the ones with the one channel continue on. Like hydrogen becomes helium, or becomes, also maybe it can go down through the periodic table just straight to lithium. Can it do that? You know, no, I was counting the channels actually. I was counting the channels as just straight up the number of protons. That might have been a mistake. It's hard to come up with a new science, guys. Can I get some help? I'm like, I think this is valid. Like, this is too good to ignore. This. That it explains hydrogen. It explains hydrogen better than quantum mechanics can. And it explains helium. Where quantum mechanics really stumbles heavily. Not to mention everything else that this like line of reasoning has explained. So for this not to be like a reasonable thing going on, that there's currents like this, it's almost zero chance. It's just a matter of figuring out, and maybe I'm not quite figuring out. Also, I made some new graphics. This is awesome. I've recorded several times last night and gave up because I kept failing. It's like, I guess I'm not supposed to share that. At least not all in like such depth. Like, at least let people fucking think it out themselves. That, like, at that point, it becomes kind of like, stop, I want to work it out. But like, seriously, like, dudes, it's kind of like done. No views, done. And few views. Thanks for the views, guys. I noticed also this. Where is it? There's a 0. That's understandable. Let's see what else. People are watching my, I think, YouTube for whatever reason. Also, people don't like me saying to war. For whatever reason, YouTube's been recommending this, probably to more people who think more mainstream. But it's been getting a bunch of views and just a bunch of dislikes. I'm like, I don't fucking want to see a dislikes, YouTube. Like, at least bring fucking people that Okay. So maybe? Definitely. Probably. At this point, it gets complex, and I need to think about it. I was thinking this work. I mean, this to me because of Morelia. I know it's ridiculous to look at this island. Like, because it has 2 channels here that have outlets, substantial channels, and then a channel inlet. I believe this was the inlet, and these were 2 outlets, and a current flowed through here, but pushed mounds over here, and then straight over here, pushing a mound here, but then it divided and went around it, but then also this way, and pushing a mound here and here, and on the in route, it just created vortices that produced gaps for basically protons. So, like, I think this is how this is. I think this is a lithium 7 atom represented in an island in a way where I think maybe it's like that. I didn't draw the coin like that. I think I actually made more sense of it right there. And then as I was describing it, like, oh, the current like hits this, which is why it doesn't cut through here. It starts building a mass here, and then it goes around the mass. And then it cuts through here, which then, by going around the mass, it also goes over here and builds up mass over here and mass over here. And this wasn't there yet. This is 7, so this is probably the last neutron to arrive on the scene. Once it's maybe blocking up over here, it maybe fills up over here. Like, this blocks, this blocks, this blocks. The current struggles to get through these like vortices that are happening here as a result of the current, which then starts to push more material over here, leading to a lithium 7 atom. So it works like that in a way where I didn't describe a backflow, and like the shape of the island makes sense. So it probably is that there is no backflow. Like, this does not come back unless like something else is happening. Not normally. Not normally. Maybe the supernova comes back. Maybe that's what's happening. All the filled channels are just bursting outward the other way, and then it becomes a supernova. But it seems to go through and just create like this after the hydrogen here. So pretty much this, still this or this, either one, it's going to arrive generally at something of this nature by just stretching out these sides where maybe not this side as much, but this side will be more stretched. So this kind of makes sense. And then proton, proton also, this is kind of like a collision, I feel like. That maybe is why like a positive symbol like energetically has emerged to be the shape that it is. Because that happens like figure eights, the infinity symbol from magnetic fields being currents flowing. It's all over the place. Zero. Phi is probably, this is probably representative of phi here, where it has this dividing, where basically the phi takes the nucleus with enough energy and divides it. Boom. Two neutrons. And then the currents build the neutrons up to a stable mass. So like it divides the neutrons, they quickly equilibrates, become at a steady state with the environment of these currents, which then is probably tritium, but it's still not very stable because of the like flow through it. So this is pretty much that's there. Like the fact that I can like jump from hydrogen to helium sequentially in just a straight up the logical lines that currents would arrive at. And then maybe they would push this out and just have like two positives here kind of thing as I drew with an alternative. And then to go from this to lithium, it would just divide one of them. So one of them would be kind of more over. So let's go back to here. This current probably was just cutting right across here. And it divided this nucleus, like here, this neutron. But then the current went through that neutron and made a second neutron out of that neutron. So there's 1, 2, 3 neutrons then. Here. So maybe I didn't draw this right. Where this opening is here, not here. Not here. Here. Because this island tells us so. It says, no, the current cuts across here. There's just a mass to the side. It divides the other one. It just divides one of them, I guess. Cuts over there, divides it, creates another proton region. And then builds up the masses till they're stable, and then that produces a wall that without enough current will build another neutron here. So at a lower energy, lithium-7 is more stable, but I think lithium-6 maybe is more prevalent in like high energy events like supernova maybe, where the current just passes through, so like this doesn't build up. This requires like a pressure here within the atom itself, which maybe is even why this is here and this. So valence bonds. So even though hydrogen has an inlet and an outlet, it only has one bond. Because the inlet and outlet are the same, which then makes that bond rather weak, maybe. Let's look at hydrogen bonds some more. What the fuck did I just download? It won't even cancel. What the fuck, dudes? Oh, dear God. Help us, dudes. This is absurd. That shouldn't happen. Don't worry, we're trustworthy. We're an institution. We can do these things. Hydrogen bond is primarily electrostatic force of attraction. Which is covalently bound to a more electronegative donor. Tendency for an atom of a given chemical element to attract shared electrons when forming a chemical bond. It's been so long since I looked at chemistry like that. Oh Lord, I'm a chemical engineer though, so don't doubt me. I yeah, maybe you didn't know that. Maybe you ain't heard about that too. This, anyway. And a patent examiner. I was just utterly prepared for this by no intent of my own, just the will of the universe, really. And also, like, not prepared for this. Like, I don't know. But that's because I'm prepared for this. Like, I can't know. It's impossible to know every little detail and look into everything. Like, you have to kind of just, like, do, like, a lightning strike, find the, like, channel between the polygons to get through the information, to get to, like, the heart of what it's, like, built from, to move on to the next subject matter and not really linger on the, like it causes a certain lack of awareness of some things maybe, but like to a point where people who are more just focused on like a certain thing, who perceive me behaving in the way I do, may be confused and assume things about me and my intelligence and their own personal awareness being greater than my own regarding certain matters that they're not aware of. And I'm just here to inform, especially those people who are most resistant. Because, I mean, people are not resistant to allow this information. Like, okay, I don't know. Like, someone who doesn't know won't defend someone else being like, I do know. They'll be like, that person seems to know. It's kind of like a child who allows a teacher being a teacher. But unfortunately, this world doesn't acknowledge me as a teacher, but treats me like a child. And so I have to actually, like, point out on the fly, because, like, by the way, I know that I, like, am drawing these reactions out of people, even though no one's watching me right now. I'm recording this with, like, how many views? When you guys hear about me, how many views do you look at my videos then? Because odds are, unless you are like one of the few paying attention to me right now, you won't actually know until I blow up, and you'll be like, damn. It's taken me 2 days to get 4 views on this. I spit hot fire. Eight views, 2 days. This is incredible. Incredible, dudes. Literally groundbreaking research. You guys are fucking so slow. So slow to like picking up on like what's going on in the world. Hello. Anyway, losing subscribers even. Like people don't think my information is informative enough. Alright. That's you do you. And I'll keep fucking breaking boundaries. Anyway, pardon me. Pardon me. Pardon the interruption. Another electromagnetic lone pair. I might do good to just look into this hydrogen bond more closely. I guess that's all I wrote down, really. Responsible for blah blah blah. In particular, is responsible for a high boiling point of water. So basically, it's almost like another bond occurring here. Just with another hydrogen that's got another current in its own way flowing in and out of it. But this just like allows for some, it's just more balanced some reason. I'm not sure exactly why it would do that. Without further investigation. But the currents, guys, the currents.